Attorney General Pam Bondi drawing criticism from both Democrats and Republicans for comments she made on Katie Miller's podcast yesterday, talking about Charlie Kirk.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie in our society. We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
The Attorney General later forced to clarify those remarks, posted on Twitter, quote, hate speech that crosses the line into threats of violence is not protected by the First Amendment. It's a crime. Free speech protects ideas, debate, even dissent, but it does not and will never protect violence. It is clear this violent rhetoric is designed to silence others from voicing conservative ideals. Of course, when people talk about hate speech, they're not necessarily talking about incitement to violence, which is a whole other category.
Right. I mean, there's hate speech around, as we know, hate crimes, right, which can lead to violence. Obviously, hate speech that can lead to violence. But what about, I don't know, hate speech around hanging the former vice president of the United States? How about hate speech or inciting violence that leads to a violent mob attacking the United States Capitol on January 6th and a police officer being killed? I mean, the hypocrisy around this is just astonishing, given that, you know, what we seem to hear from President Trump is hate speech or mean speech or negative, anything he just doesn't like. Anyone who doesn't ask him a question that he deems inappropriate seems to be, you know, hateful. We've seen him berate many of our CNN colleagues and others for any question he just deems is out of bounds.
Yeah.
So what's concerning here is, you know, the U.S. Constitution is supposed to help us guide around what's hate speech in terms of any audience that we might be speaking to, not just people we don't like.
I saw a lot of conservatives on social media taking real issue with what Attorney General Bondi had to say.
Yeah, and I think that's why she had very worthwhile clarifications. Look, you can't yell fire in a movie theater. You can't yell bomb at an airport. There are consequences to those actions when they turn violent. We know that this killer was on Discord and all the chants talking to people wanting violence against Charlie Kirk. If this was aimed at another group besides conservatives, I think our tone would be a bit different. Look, I agree that there is a difference between hate speech and speech that's asking for violence or inciting people toward violence. But I think we're right now very close to that cusp and a lot of left-wing chatter, and it needs to be looked at. And by the way, the administration says they have evidence that groups are funding a lot of that, and that should be looked into.
So, Terry, our former colleague, ABC's Jonathan Karl, tried to ask President Trump about this earlier today. Take a listen.
A lot of your allies say hate speech is free speech.
We'll probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart. Maybe they'll come after ABC. Well, ABC paid me $16 million recently for a form of hate speech, right? Your company paid me $16 million for a form of hate speech. So maybe they'll have to go after you.
First of all, the notion that Jonathan Karl has a lot of hate in his heart.
He's one of the fairest and most decent people.
I don't think he has any hate in his heart. But what was your reaction when you heard that?
Well, first, as to Trump, look, this is basically what every petty autocrat wants. Make your whims the law. Okay, little clarity. There's no such thing as hate speech in American federal law. The words never appear in the U.S. Code. And the Supreme Court, for decades, Republicans and conservatives alike, have again and again and again said when the government wants to punish speech, they have to meet an incredibly high burden. That came in a case where somebody threatened to shoot Lyndon Johnson, in a case where somebody burned a cross on a lawn, in a case of stalking a singer-songwriter, and in the case of the Westboro Baptist Church, which staged these despicable demonstrations outside the funerals of fallen soldiers. Each time, the Supreme Court overturned a conviction won by the government. It is almost impossible to win.
But his comments there come the same day that President Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "Today I have the great honor of bringing a $15 billion defamation and libel lawsuit against the New York Times, one of the worst and most degenerate newspapers in the history of our country, becoming a virtual mouthpiece for the radical left Democrat Party. The New York Times has been allowed to freely live smear and defame me for so long that stops now." In a note to staff, the New York Times publisher said, quote, "Everyone, regardless of their politics, should be troubled by the growing anti-press campaign led by President Trump and his administration." TW, any issues with that? What do you think of him suing the New York Times for articles that he felt portrayed him negatively?
Well, he has the right as an American to bring lawsuits against those who he thinks defame him. He obviously won the lawsuit against ABC for defamation when he was caught.
Well, he didn't win it. They settled.
Well, they settled. But what was the core of it? It was defamation, being called a rapist.
The core of it was the business interests of Disney.
Well,
Right.
well
That's
perhaps,
also-
but why the case? Hold on a second. Why the case? Well, bear with me.
No.
Why the case was brought was for that reason. He has the right to do it. Okay. There is. I saw one poll in YouGov saying 67% of the American people do not believe that Donald Trump gets a fair shake. He often says that I could cure cancer and everyone would hate it. The fact of the matter is Donald Trump feels that he is uniquely picked on by the press. He is constantly challenging them, and I think he was trolling Jonathan Carl there. But I think this is his remedy to try to get at what is the core reason for why the media will never give Trump and his supporters a fair shake. Will it work? We will see, but he has the right to do it.
Well, I think that Jonathan Carl, once again, is not a hater in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But as far as the president bringing a libel suit, there is leadership interest there involved in there. I will say this. This whole discussion are the chickens come home to roost of the illiberal left's project begun 30 years ago to make speech violence, right? To make hate a crime. And they were always warned by libertarians, at some point, a government you don't like will use this against you. And that's what's happening now.
I think the other problem that I have with some of these lawsuits is it's not just that he's bringing the lawsuit against these networks. It's then saying, and we're going to mess with I'm going to use the levers of government to mess with your business interests. That is not appropriate. It's one thing to say, I'm going to sue you around speech that I think is inappropriate or because I have my First Amendment rights. But when you are using those levers to then create other problems for a business entity, that's where it becomes problematic. And unfortunately, we're seeing that happen over and over again.
Fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.